Listen up.
Believe it or not, finishing up I was doing the final touches on the China deal. And that's going to be one of the great deals ever. And it's going to ultimately lead to the opening of China, which is something that is incredible because that's a whole big untapped market of 1.5 billion people. And so I was actually doing the finals, but I got to see enough of it. And certainly I spoke to my people. It's a witch hunt. It's a sham. It's a hoax. Nothing was done wrong. Zero was done wrong. I think it's a horrible thing to be using the tool of impeachment, which is supposed to be used in an emergency, and it would seem many, many, many years apart, to be using this for a perfect phone call where the president of that country said there was no pressure whatsoever, didn't even know what we were talking about. It was perfect. The relationship is perfect. I've done much more for them than Obama did for them. It's a scam. It's something that shouldn't be allowed, and it's a very bad thing for our country. And you're trivializing impeachment. And I tell you what, someday there'll be a Democrat president and there'll be a Republican House, and I suspect they're going to remember it. Because when you use impeachment for absolutely nothing other than to try and get political gain. Now, with that being said, my poll numbers, as you know, have gone through the roof. Fundraising for the Republican Party has gone through the roof. We're setting records. Nobody's ever seen anything like it because the people are disgusted. The people are absolutely disgusted. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. And I watched yesterday, I got to see quite a bit of it yesterday, and I watched these Democrats on the committee make fools out of themselves. Absolute fools out of themselves. And I also saw them quoting all the time incorrectly. They kept saying me. It wasn't about me, it was about us. The word was us. So they kept saying me. It said us. Can you do us a favor? Our country, comma, our country. Then it talked about seeing the Attorney General of the United States. For these people to say me, they would say me. You said, do me a favor. No, it didn't say that. It said, do us a favor, our country. Talking about the past election, talking about corruption. The other thing nobody remembers and nobody likes to talk about, and I talk about it all the time, is why isn't Germany, why isn't France, why aren't other European countries paying? Because we're paying the suckers. You know, for years we've been the suckers, but we're not the suckers anymore. Big difference. But why isn't Germany paying big money? They're the ones, I mean, they have a much bigger benefit than we do because Ukraine is really a stoppage between Russia and parts of Europe, the major part of Europe. Why aren't European countries paying? Why isn't France paying a lot of money? Why is it always the United States? We're 7,000 miles away. Why is it always the suckers that pay? So we've changed that, but nobody brings that up. I think that the whole impeachment thing, hoax, I guess you could call it, because it is a hoax. And Nancy Pelosi knows it. By the way, they duped her yesterday. She was on an interview, and she said, we've been working on this for 2.5 years. So she was working on it, in other words, 2 years before we ever spoke to Ukraine. She said, we've been working on impeachment for 2.5 years. And the reporter was shocked when they got this answer, because it showed she's a liar. So it's a very sad thing for our country, but it seems to be very good for me politically. And again, those people, because I watch some of the dishonest fake media, they're saying, well, the polls have remained the same. No, the polls have not remained the same. I think you understand that, John. The polls have gone through the roof for Trump because people, especially with independent voters, and especially in swing states, I could show you numbers that nobody has ever seen numbers like this before. So the impeachment is a hoax. It's a sham. It started a long time ago, probably before I came down the escalator with the future First Lady. Started a long time ago. And when you look at the IG report and you look at these horrible FBI people talking about we got to get them out, insurance policies, you know, the insurance policy is just in case she loses, meaning Crooked Hillary, who's crooked as a $3 bill. Just in case Crooked Hillary loses, we've got an insurance policy. Well, we've been going through the insurance policy now for 3 years, and it's a disgrace. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Say it.
Say how much China will be buying. Will they hit 50?
I think they'll hit $50 billion in agriculture. No, much more than 50 because it's also manufacturing and other. But I think in agriculture they will hit $50 billion.
Next year or when?
Pretty soon. They've already stepped it up. My deal with them was 2 months ago. We had it in pretty good form. I said, do me a favor, start buying agriculture. And they started. If you look, I mean, they're already buying. Even before the deal is signed, they're buying. Well, we're with the people of Venezuela 100%. It's so important to us, and we're going to be discussing Venezuela today. It'll be a big subject.
Mr. President, do you prefer a short process in the Senate or a more extended process?
Well, I've heard Lindsey Graham, who's terrific, and I heard his statement, and I like that. And I'll do whatever I want. Look, we did nothing wrong. So I'll do long or short. I've heard Mitch, I've heard Lindsey. I think they are very much on agreement on some concept. I'll do whatever they want to do. It doesn't matter. I wouldn't mind a long process because I'd like to see the whistleblower who's a fraud. The whistleblower wrote a false report. And I really blew it up when I released the transcript of the call. And then Schiff gets up and I blew him up too, because he went up in front of Congress and he made a statement about what I said that was totally false. And then a long time after he made it, when he got caught, he said, that was parody. No, Schiff is a crooked, he's a corrupt politician and a disgrace. And because of the fact he's in Congress, he's got immunity, so you can't do anything. But he went up there, you know that, he made a totally false statement. The whistleblower wrote a totally false statement. So it's a fraud. Then I say, where is the informer, the one that informed the whistleblower? You had an informer. He disappeared. You know why he disappeared? Because I released the transcript. Had I not released that transcript, we would have had an informer. We would have had another whistleblower. By the way, where's the second whistleblower? Remember that? We have a second whistleblower. We have breaking news. Look, not all of it, but much of the media is corrupt. These are bad people, they're sick people, and they're corrupt. And we're fighting the Democrats, and we're fighting a lot of the corrupt media. But I asked the corrupt media, where's the second whistleblower? Now, had I not had a transcript, I'm lucky we had this transcript, which, by the way, has now been verified by the lieutenant colonel, okay? He's another beauty. So where is all of the stuff that was going to happen? Once I released it, and I released it quickly, but once I released it, all of a sudden the second whistleblower disappeared. The first whistleblower, who was all set to testify, all of a sudden he becomes this saint-like figure that they don't need him anymore. The one that everybody wanted to see, including Schiff, was the whistleblower. Once I released the text of what happened, the transcript, that was the end. Everybody disappeared. So now there's no informer, there's no second whistleblower, everybody's gone. And by the way, a guy like Sondland, nobody ever said it. He said very strongly that I said, I want nothing and no quid pro quo. Nobody says that. That's what he said. He said it in Congress. Nobody ever says that. So look, we're dealing with a lot of corrupt people. There was nothing done wrong. To use the power of impeachment on this nonsense is an embarrassment to this country. The president just said it. It's an embarrassment to our country. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you very
much. Sometimes we will leave the microphone up because you might hear a shouted question and an answer back from the president. We're not anticipating that. This is a bilateral inside the Oval Office with the president of Paraguay, and we didn't get to hear that president talk, but we heard a whole lot from President Trump. I want to go first of all to John Roberts, who's live on the North Lawn with the very latest on this. The president said a lot with these few words: this has been a wild week. No doubt.
Yeah, we all sort of chuckled at that when the president uttered those words. By the way, Harris, the only thing you missed by not leaving the microphones up for a little while was the president said, "What, no questions about Paraguay?" I mean, clearly the Paraguay issue is an important one when it comes to bilateral relations with this country, but there's a lot of other things going on in this wild week that deserve our attention. Now, the president really did say a couple of significant things there. One is that he believes that the Democrats have trivialized the process of impeachment, suggesting that the next time there is a Democratic president and a Republican-controlled Congress, that sort of trivialization, or some people have said weaponization of the impeachment process, could come back to bite a Democratic president. The other thing was that the president said that he would like to see a long process in the Senate with a lot of different witnesses. Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham are pushing for a shorter process in the Senate. They think that having a longer one would give more credibility to whatever is going to come out of the House in the next few days. And they believe that it has no credibility, what might be coming out of the House, based on those articles of impeachment, so they want a short process. But the president would like to see a lot of witnesses called. He'd like to call Adam Schiff. He'd like to call Hunter Biden. He'd probably like to call Joe Biden. He wants to call the whistleblower as well. But he said that he would defer to whatever McConnell wants to do, so it looks likely, Harris, that we will have a shorter process in the Senate. Another significant thing that happened today, the president and China have come to a phase one deal. China's going to buy some $50 billion in agricultural products. In exchange, the United States is going to reduce tariffs on a number of goods that are being charged 15% right now. That'll probably go down to 7.5%, but tariffs will remain at 25% on $250 billion worth of goods. Tariffs that were scheduled to go into effect on Sunday will no longer go into effect, and then they'll begin negotiations on a phase two deal immediately, though the Chinese are saying, well, the progress with that will be determined by how this phase one deal is implemented. So a lot yet to be seen. The market isn't particularly thrilled. It's down a little bit, Harris.
Yeah, a little bit. It was in some really north territory for a while. On
yeah.
word that, something was happening with China.
The deal.
So that's great. So phase one. John Roberts outside the White House, obviously. Thank you very much. Ari Fleischer. The top line of Democrats have trivialized the process of impeachment is interesting because you've got some talk today that, and our own Mark Levin tweeted this out, as just a watcher of the process, is this going to be the new way that things are settled inside the Beltway? That's some scary thought if this is how they're going to settle stuff.
Well, and I remember distinctly when articles of impeachment were introduced against George W. Bush. Now, they didn't move anywhere in the House, but several Democrats wanted to impeach President Bush. They wanted to do it to Ronald Reagan, to George H.W. Bush. And this keeps happening. Now, whether it moves forward or not, it only moved forward against Donald Trump here. But this is what's so troubling, and it's why I said from the start that the president's phone call was inappropriate, was wrong. You should not ask a foreign nation to investigate your political opponent. But impeachment has never been the right answer. And the Democrats now have shot a bullet that they can't take back. And what are they going to do if the president does something really bad? Are they going to try to do this twice? That's the problem the Democrats
Absolutely. Absolutely, they're going to do it twice. I mean, they've already said that.
And that'll be another waste of the nation's time, most likely.
Kennedy?
No, and people have fatigue for this sort of a thing, and it's sad because it cheapens and it lessens what impeachment is supposed to be and what impeachment is supposed to do. And I think you summed it up perfectly. Something was wrong here. But impeachment is not the answer, and I think that's why, and I'm curious to see what Marie has to say about this, I think that's why you've seen Democrats float the idea of a censure, because that's only happened once before, and that seems more appropriate, and it's false to say it's either or. You can only impeach the president. It's either impeachment or nothing. If you feel that his behavior was inappropriate, the only answer is impeachment. And I think that's a false choice, and voters know it.
Marie, how tricky is it at this point for Democrats, as Kennedy is pointing out, if you then toggle to something that's less than impeachment? I mean, you're already going to lose some Democrats in those Trump-carried districts.
Maybe.
Van Drew, I was just reading because I was looking for the confirmation of it. He said it on Wednesday that he is really thinking about doing the same thing he did with inquiry and saying no to a full impeachment vote. And he says that there are others like him.
First of all, when the founders wrote impeachment into our Constitution, they were thinking precisely, and we know this from their writings, about foreign interference in our political system. They were thinking about France at the time, but they were imagining a scenario not unlike this one. So the idea that President Trump asking a foreign power to get political dirt for his personal gain was actually something the founders absolutely would have been contemplating when they wrote impeachment as the way the House could move against the president. To your political point, Harris, I actually do. You know, Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin, I've known her for a long time. I worked with her at the CIA. She is very smart. She's very thoughtful. Her interview on Newsroom today here at Fox showed how she is the kind of Democrat taking this process seriously. She's looking at the substance. She's spending the weekend with it. There are a lot of Democrats who are doing that. They're not just falling in line with party leadership like the Republicans are. They're actually looking at the evidence and making their own case for it.
But do you worry? I mean, there have been so many times that in negotiations with other countries, all kinds of people ask for other things. And we have heard Democrats say that they're concerned that this could extend to everything everybody does when they're negotiating with other nations. I mean, it would be very easy to make this, if you feel this strongly about this case, it would be very easy to make this exact case against Joe Biden, against Democrats in Congress who have gone and asked for other investigations elsewhere around the world. Like, if this is the bar and you're uncomfortable with this, are you worried about how foreign policy is conducted going forward?
Not at all. And
Really?
Someone who's worked in foreign policy for many years in administrations, this was not just President Trump asking a foreign power for something. It was two things. It was asking for something that was purely a political favor to him. And if he actually thought there was a national security reason for the United States to look into this issue, you don't have your personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, do it. There's an actual process.
How do you know it
inside
was
the government.
purely a political favor for him?
Because there
But
was
none of that's a crime.
And that's the whole thing. He didn't follow proper protocol. If what was motivating the president was the corruption that had occurred during Obama and Biden's administration, there was a proper way of doing it other than cutting it off, kind of like cutting your hot water off to a cold drip, especially if it was one of our allies that Congress had done already passed this amount of money and this amount of military aid that was to be given to our partners, those who stood with us. I can understand where the Democrats is coming from towards it looks like it's given the appearances that Donald Trump is trying to better the Russian government more so than the Ukrainian government. I can understand the reason why that they have come to that conclusion. I can truly understand that. But at the same time, have we truly seen all the proof in regard to what the president was trying to reach a point at to begin with in the regards of what actually did happen with the Ukrainians in the Obama administration? You know, that's the part there that has yet to fully come out into the eyes of the general public. And that's the reason why that I have said all along, maybe they're both guilty. Maybe President Trump is guilty towards doing what he done, in which now we know that he is. It's just a matter of what motivated him to do what he done. Why did he do what he done? Was it based around the corruption that occurred in the past towards wanting to protect the money and the assets that was going to be going back to the Ukrainian government? Or was it based around selfish needs towards wanting to bring up that much more dirt against Mr. Biden towards making Mr. Trump look more favorable in the eyes of the general public because of what had occurred, providing that it occurred. It may not have occurred, but providing that it occurred during the Obama administration. I think that's the entanglement that we, the people, has yet to truly decipher on what actually was Mr. Donald Trump's interior grassroots motive in him doing what he done. We know he done it. Now, why did he do it? But once more, with him being the president and him having all these advisors and all these attorneys around him, should they not have raised a red flag in what that he was doing towards saying, hey, Mr. President, if you're going to do this for this particular reason, there is a proper protocol towards how to go about doing this. And he did not do that. That's the point that the Democrats is trying to make. Mr. Donald Trump did not follow proper protocol. And how many times have we seen that again and again and again? Be it as it may be because of his unprofessionalism in politics, but there is a certain tight walk line that is required for you to walk in the regard of being the president. Once more, whenever you have three different functioning governments, that one keeps the other one in check, there was no way that he or his advisors or his attorneys should have known that what that they was doing was not following proper protocol. It was not the proper procedure just to up and cut off the aid for about a month and a half, give or take a few days, to one of your partners, to one of your allies. There's no doubt that one country promotes a favor to another country. It's kind of like the old saying, one hand helps wash the other. You pat my back, I'll pat yours. This stuff has been going on now since probably the beginning of our nation. And we have understood that, and our founders have understood that, and there's nothing wrong with that, as long as it's done on a open, acceptable platform. You do this for me, I'll do that for you. You know, it kind of is a pro quo. You do this for me, I'll do that for you. We're standing together, united we stand, divided we fall. But whenever you take your interest and it's primarily focused around your interest, your campaign, to better your administration, then you're talking about something that reaches the level of treasoning or being in violation of proper protocol. And I think that's the whole deal in behind all of this, is that it's hard for the general public to keep up with for a couple reasons. Reason number one is because Donald Trump keeps saying that he ain't done nothing wrong. And number two, the general public, open society, don't realize what actually goes on with these diplomats towards exchanging information in favor to one another. And we're going to do this for you if you do this for us. We're going to do this for us if you do this for you. Vice versa. I don't think the general public understands the dynamics of politics, and if they did, they would probably rear up and say, my God, what is America doing towards fitting the bill towards all these other countries, towards throwing our money away? Well, you know, once more, you got to go back and you got to look at the truth. Donald Trump has brought a lot of enlightenment in the regards of how unfair things has been running in the past 25 or 30 years, in the past 3 or 4 administrations, towards us basically giving the farm away. So you got to put credit where credit is due. Donald Trump is the one that has brought all this to the surface towards trying to drain the swamp. Once more, doing what he said that he was going to do. That's what he run on, and that's what he's trying to do. Now, is he doing it in the way that he's supposed to be doing it? I don't know. I don't know the proper protocol. I'm not the President of the United States. I ain't never studied that deeply into our government affairs towards knowing what you're either supposed to do or what you're not supposed to do. But I know this. If I was the President of the United States, I would have people hired around me that did know. And if they failed to let me know what I was doing was wrong, they would be the first people that I would let go. Regardless whether it was Rudy Giuliani or whoever. If they did not advise me in-depthly towards what I should do, what I shouldn't do, in the way that I should do it in, if they failed me in that regard, those would be some of the first people that I would look at them and say, you're fired. Go seek employment elsewhere because you let me down. And once more, that's the whole concept of the strength of an administration. It's not so much the president, but it's everybody that the president has around him or her. And if you don't have good, sound advisement, if you don't have good, sound attorneys, if you don't have good, sound, strong relationships, your administration will start falling apart. And the next thing you know, you'll be crying wolf and won't nobody come to your rescue. Kind of like what happened out here at 291 Thompson Road whenever David and I kept crying, woof, 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 help, help, help. And we couldn't get no proper help. Even after hiring attorneys, even after seeking good, honest counsel, we still could not get help from the judicial system in this county proper. Because I feel like that after about the second or third time, whenever the occurrences kept coming up again and again and again with the same family, that's whenever the prosecuting attorney, the DA, should have put his foot down with the strength of Tommy Moore and said enough is enough. These people are being railroaded down there at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255. And that is not what happened. Mr. Moore let it grow, let it intensify, let it escalate, let it evolve, hoping that there was going to be blood on the floor, hoping that it would be a major confrontation. And in doing so, hoping that that would be the final existence of this so-called individual by the name of Dennis James Juby Jackson, and that would basically put a dagger in the Windmill Ministries missions towards finally we have done away with this man's ideology, finally we have done away with this man's desires, finally we have done away with this man's hopes, finally we have done away with this man's passions, finally we have done away with this man's ministry that he has been trying to manifest going all the way back to 1989 whenever I first started preaching my message, and I was shunned, violated by the pillars of the community towards telling me that I needed to get off the airwaves. In other words, I didn't have a right to speak what I felt like had been interpreted out of the Bible, which once more is a violation of my Constitution. I didn't have a right to go purchase a sword and to go on a 40-day, 40-night fast up in land between the lakes in 1989 to the degree of God sanctifying a sword and going to use it to be able to open up the second seal in the book of Revelations. I didn't have a right to stand up for my religious compassion, passionate desires that I felt like that God had engulfed me in. And that is a violation of my rights that have been corresponded by the government affairs here in the state of Tennessee, beginning in Kenton, Tennessee, whenever I went for help And the only help that I got was being branded as somebody being psychologically, emotionally, chemically imbalanced. And up until that time, I had never, ever, even so much as even been around a psychiatric ward or a psychiatric community, other than my mother and I begging once more for help, going to Martin, Tennessee, to the welfare system up there, and trying to get some sort of help towards the abusive behavior that was going on during the time that us boys was growing up around here. That was the only time that I had ever been associated or even close to any type of social, so-called psychiatric network up until what happened in my life in 1983. And to be quite frank with you, I'm going to go ahead and say this, be it as it may, whether or not it be politically right or wrong. Because it's on my heart, and God shared it on my heart yesterday, pertaining to Miss May, that used to be Sweat, that now is Norman. There was lots of rumors that went on after the occurrence of her husband supposedly having an accident, that she was in fact the instigator or the perpetrator that had been engaged in that type of illegal procedure in the death of her husband. There was a reason why my mother chose not to give the green light to her boys in saying, okay, let's go ahead and fulfill this plot. While he's in there sleeping, I'm going to go outside, because we didn't have an indoor bathroom. I'm going to go outside, you get up, the gun will already be loaded, and go ahead and blow his head completely off of his shoulders while I'm outside, him thinking that I'm going to the bathroom. If he even awakes towards even knowing that I got out of the bed. My mother never done that. Though we talked about how that we was going to execute him in his sleep. The whole family did. All of us did, because of the anguish that we was going through. The main reason why my mother didn't give us boys the green light of going in and killing somebody that was sick, it wasn't necessarily because she loved him. It wasn't because of her political passion that she had towards knowing that he probably gained this type of illness or this type of sickness during being engaged in World War II. It was the fact that she knew that if we had done that, the odds of us standing in front of the courts around here, in front of these people, and being declared as it being a justifiable homicide was probably 1,000,000 to 1. The way these people was during that time, and still are whenever it comes to true justice. And if Miss May did in fact have anything to do with the accident that occurred with her first husband, I can honestly say that she probably felt the exact same way. If I reveal this openly, publicly, her knowing what type of people that she was living around within a half a mile or a mile of where I'm living at right now, she probably felt like that she would not be treated fairly and justly in the eyes of the courts, if she actually had anything to do with that, in which she has been falsely accused of that for many, many years. But once more, it goes back to the unity of the neighborhood. It goes back to speaking volumes about the type of people that was living and is still living in this neighborhood towards their unethical behavior in it being unjust and unfair. Why else would of a community have allowed for David and I guarantee you, they may not tell you the truth right now, And I'm talking about houses within a 2-mile radius from here. They may not tell you today what was going on down there at 291 Thompson Road was wrong. But they know it in their hearts, and they know it in their minds towards what was going on. Just like they knew what was going on 35, 40, 45, 50 years ago. That those same exchanges that was happening with our father was wrong. Just like we knew that the exchanges that was going on with Miss May's husband towards his violent behavior was wrong. Was wrong. These people around here think that they can treat their family and treat their kids anyway, and just so they leave a little breath in their lungs, we're supposed to sit back and take it. We're supposed to take this type of child abuse. You know why? You know why? Because they was abused. And it goes to show that the sickness, the disease, exchanges from one generation to another generation to another generation to another generation. Well, I got news for this generation. It's time to stop the violence. It's time to stop the abuse. It's time to stop the corruption pertaining to people's rights, including the children that are growing up in this area right now. And if nobody else was going to speak up for those 3 kids across the road at the ages of about 8, 6, and 3, give or take somewhere around those ages, David and I was going to speak up. Even at the cost of me being branded of being a criminal. I was willing to sacrifice my reputation once more again on the line of trying to spare 3 innocent children of going through harsh environmental things that they should not have never had to have been exposed to. Never should have had to have been exposed to. And you would think that the grandparents that are still living less than a quarter of a mile from here, less than probably 2/10 of a mile from here, you would think that they would be grateful. Grateful that there was somebody in the neighborhood that thought enough of the neighborhood that they was willing to put up a sign saying that if we find any type of suspicious activity, you will be reported to the police. But what good does it do to contact the police if they're polluted, if they're already contaminated, and they think that this type of activity is not only fair, but right? What good does it do? Once more, you go back to the Bible. If the blind lead the blind, they shall both leadeth off into the ditch. And I knew that they wasn't going to pull out the red carpet for me whenever I come back here in 2014, going on now 5 years. But I didn't expect to be attacked. And if I did expect to be attacked before I ever come back here, I would have expected fair, just, right treatment in the regard that the law enforcement communities, the judicial system, would have watched my back, would have stood in my corner of being violated again and again and again and again. But that did not happen here at 291 Thompson Road and at 430 Beech Grove Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255. What we had was a circus. And what we had was various people working with and for law enforcement that was hoping that old Juby would eventually, somebody would push enough buttons that he would basically go off the deep end. And the next thing you know, old Juby done something once more that was going to be counterproductive in the eyes of the Windmill Ministries missions. That's what this has all been about. That's exactly what this has all been about. And I have figured them out. how worthless and how sorry that the majority of these people that are still living within arm's throwing distance of this house where I'm staying at right now. Actually, I live in a barn. I'm not good enough to live in a house. I'm like the Lord Jesus Christ. Live in a stable. Live in a barn, a pole barn. And if this is what they want, give them what they want. Give them their sexual perverted behavior. Give them their divorces. Let them have their abortions. Let them have their $23 trillion being in debt. Let them have their 2.3 million incarcerated federal, state, and local either prisoners or inmates. Let them have it. Because now we're seeing these exchanges, these elements start to come back and bite them all in the rear end. Now their granddaughters is wound up pregnant by a drug dealer, or they've wound up in a bad divorce, or other horrible things is occurring towards bad shootings, molestations, in addition to how we're going to pay for a $23 trillion debt. Now these things is coming back and haunting them. And somebody like me is standing in the corner saying, I told you so. I told you so. The whole time, I told you so. And they're bewildered by it because I'm still standing on the promises of the teachings of Christ, which tells me to be wise as serpents, but harmless as doves. Because I have never been violent. They can't throw that up against me. Because I've never been a sexual pedophile. They can't throw that up against me. Because I've never been incarcerated for any type of drug or alcohol charge. They can't throw that up against me. I have tried to live a decent life. Have I been perfect? No. Should I have probably got a DUI whenever I was 17 or 18 or 19 or 22 years old whenever I wasn't trying to live right for the Lord? Probably. Probably so. But keep in mind the laws changed from what it was back then. Back then you could drink at the age of 18 to the point of now they've moved it up to 21. The laws also changed to the point that you could get away with a 1.4 drinking on the breathing on the bubble, whatever you call it, breath analogy thing, to the point that now I think it's less than 1%. In other words, if you drink one beer and a cop pulls you over and smells any alcohol on you, odds are you're probably not going to be able to pass the alcohol test. In other words, they've kept narrowing and narrowing and narrowing and gotten tighter and tighter and tighter in this area. I don't know what goes on in Illinois or California or Florida or Mississippi because I don't live there. I just know what's going on here. I know the state of Illinois is fixing to pass canvass pertaining to legalizing marijuana in the next 2 weeks, the first of the year. And you won't see that here in the state of Tennessee because there's too many people making money on the trade of it being underground, the black market. That's the reason why they don't legalize marijuana, even though they know that it's good for glaucoma. They know that it's good for people that's got seizures. They know that it's good for people that's going through chemo that needs help pertaining to their appetites. These are some of the sorriest, worthless individuals that I think that ever I've been around. And not all of them are worthless. Worthless as a boar hog with tits. Not all of them are worthless. But the majority of them are pertaining to the elderly class, the older class, the ones that's supposed to be the pillars of the community that now has nice homes and nice cars and nice bank accounts. Some of them even has luxury homes off at the river or down in Gulfport, Mississippi, or maybe they got a nice home in Destin, Florida, or somewhere in Florida somewhere over by Pensacola or Panama. Yeah. They've steadily built up their little nest egg. But people like us continue to suffer. And they continue to ostracize us and treat us like we're misfits. Nothing more than outcasts. So whatever befalls upon to this great nation, and I don't mean it literally because of me wanting this to happen, but whatever happens to these people's lives in a horrible, horrible way, the generations before me that had an opportunity that they could have grabbed the bull by the horns and chose not to, that has been part of this movement, that has been part of this resistance movement. Once more, white man speaketh with forked tongue. They talk about peace, but you don't see no one knocking on the Windmill Ministries door. You don't see my phone blowing up. What you see is people resisting, and what you see is people turning their backs, and what you see is continually being violated towards property being vandalized, and the law sniggering and giggling, thinking that they have gotten away with all this. That's what you see. In reality, that's what you see. Because they never wanted the individual that's speaking to you right now to have a snowball chance in hell towards ever becoming predominant or ever becoming influential in the eyes of society. And I can prove it by going all the way back whenever I first made the first exchange on WENK radio station up in Union City after about the third or fourth message that I was putting out on Sunday morning on a 30-minute slot. Mr. Wooten, that owns Chevrolet Garage right up here in Dresden, Tennessee, told his son, which was his son-in-law, Jimmy Atkins, tell that individual, if he does not shut up, if he does not sit down, he should seek employment elsewhere. And that's exactly what I done. I sought employment elsewhere, and I took my tools and I packed them up, and that's whenever I went to Mason Hall, Tennessee, and I bought a wooden structure that represented the 4 horsemen out of the Bible, that had the 5th horse on the back of that Windmill Ministries pertaining to Christ on his horse, and I went around and I started the Windmill Ministries missions on my own. And the reason why I done it that way is because I knew that I wasn't going to get support from the Alamo Baptist Church. I knew that I wasn't going to get support from the First Baptist Church in Sedonia, or the Assembly of God Church in Sedonia, or the Methodist Church in Sedonia, or the Second Baptist Church in other areas. I knew that if I was going to bring forth this message, that I was going to have to do it in an unorthodox way, going through the back door of the churches rather than going through the front. And now, and only now, since the platform of Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, social medias, have I been able to branch out and get my message further out other than arm's distance towards doing it the old-fashioned way, towards wearing out my vehicles. God only knows that the paperwork that I have had to pay for and didn't get a dime worth of tax exemptions from the general community, because the general community had made up their minds that they wasn't going to support the Windmill Ministries missions. Even at the expense of watching things escalate and go in the opposite direction towards peace and utopia. That's how full of hypocrisy and wickedness that this bunch has been. That's the reason why I flowed a pirate flag out here on my pole, along with the Jewish six-pointed star below it, in regard to having empathy and sympathy for the shooting that went on up towards New York with the Jewish community. These people have been taught in such of a narrow-minded way, they get offended when somebody like me comes along towards trying to steer them clear. So once more, you can't liberate a group of people that don't feel like that they need to be liberated. So let them stay on their drugs. And we're not talking about legalized drugs. We're not talking about drugs to help their glaucoma or their chemotherapy. Let them stay on their drugs. Let them continue to do acts that are contrary to the Word of God, and let them go through whatever that they're going to go through, because God says that He will let the wicked turn upon to the wicked. And of course, man, the courts just love that. Yes, sir, the more disturbances that we have, the more divorces that we have, the more corruption and crime that we have, the more money is going to go into the lawyers' pockets, the more money it's going to go into the judges' pockets, the more money it's going to go into the DA's pockets. Well, now, after 30 years and $23 trillion, where's all the money gone to? Look around. It's hard to hide money. Whenever you have people that go to the Tennessee River that spend as much as $40,000, $50,000 on a bass boat, that's worth more money than my whole piece of property that I'm sitting on right here. Whenever you have money, people that have bank accounts of $500,000 to $1 million laying around so they can take care of their properties in other places, it's pretty obvious where that money has went. It has not went in the occurrences towards being able to help people with the Windmill Ministries missions, towards helping the sick, helping those that are on drugs, helping those that have post-traumatic stress that wound up going through a bad occurrence either in military or having other bad problems. It hasn't went towards us. No. Every dime that this ministry has put out towards putting itself out there has been at the expense of coming out of my pocket. And you may be asking, well, Dennis, you don't ask for money. You don't beg for money like all these other preachers do. Oh, if you'll send me $10, I'll send you a prayer cloth and we'll put it under your pillow and God will multiply bless you. You know why I don't do that? First of all, I'm not a scam artist. I'm not a panhandler like a lot of these preachers are towards panhandling the way that they're panhandling. And second of all, I don't feel like that I should have to ask. I was under the leadership and the guidance whenever I was a child growing up under an honor system. That if you pat my back, I'll pat yours. If you want favors with God Almighty, then you take care of the people that's in charge of the Lord's work. And that ain't what has occurred here in the past 30 years. They have been doing just the opposite. They have been poking, sniggering, laughing. They have been neglect in their civil duties towards allowing for all these occurrences to continue to happen. And it's been this way in this area now for ever since I've been here, since 1967. Worthless, sorry people that sit back and allow for other people to be damaged and ruined. You don't think that these people are going to be held accountable for what they have heard and for what they have seen and for what that they could do that they didn't do? You don't think that these people are going to be held accountable? I got news for them. you will be held accountable. There was a reason why the man tended to the man's wounds that was the Good Samaritan after somebody had robbed him and beat him up and took him to a hotel and told the hotelman, tend to his wounds, and whenever I return back, if I owe you any more money, please let me know. There was a reason why that man done that in the Bible. And the reason why that he done that is because that he knew by him coming up onto that stranger that was in that situation, if he turned his back on that guy, then the Lord was possibly going to turn his back on him. And the Lord would question him. You come upon this person and you didn't do nothing about it. So you get in exchange what you sowed. You sowed corruption, you get back corruption. You sowed this type of heathenistic, barbaric acting, you get this type of action in the spirit world. It'll come back to them. They may not think that it's going to come back to them because they've got pleasurable cars, pleasurable homes, pleasurable bank accounts. Oh, they've got pleasurable positions. They get to wear their nice suits with their nice ties and walk around with their nice clothing and their nice shoes and their makeup and all their good smelly perfume and cologne and all the other amenities that goes along with it, and they think they've got the tiger by the tail. In which they may have in this lifetime. But in the lifetime to come, they're going to figure out where they made a bad move. I'd rather die a pauper than to think that I had all this luxury stuff that I had gotten bogusly, and I could have helped, and I chose not to help in these charitable situations of people that deserve better. I'm going to leave it at that. Once more, this has been a historical day pertaining to the president speaking. It's been a sad day. It's been a monumental day. And to be quite frank with you, I really don't think we're out of the woods yet, not only in these affairs, but in all these other different affairs that are just steadily getting worse and worse and worse, which is once more going in the opposite direction towards peace and utopia. White man speaketh with forked tongue. They talk about peace like it's some sort of fairy tale. The Bible is not a fairy tale. The Bible and the predictions of the Bible is real. And God's going to make sure that the Bible and the predictions of the Bible are going to come true, are going to be real, just like he said that it would be more easier for heaven and earth to pass than for one jot or for one tittle to fail. I didn't write the book of Revelations pertaining to the 7 seals, the 4 horsemen, the 2 witnesses. I didn't write the book of Revelations, neither nor did I write any of the books that's in the Bible. But I know this, if it's written in the Bible by the prophets of God and through his Son Jesus Christ, God will see to it that those things will occur in last day biblical Bible prophecy. Thanks again. Good luck to all of us, and shalom.